But we jumped into that and we were really successful. We grew really quickly, figuring out eventually that overservicing and undercharging aren't great business strategies. So we had some...
Well, they can be at the start, right? Welcome to the Digital Marketing Wingman Podcast, the podcast where we bring you helpful tips and advice on websites, Google, and social media. Welcome back to the Digital Marketing Wingman Podcast. I am joined here today by Chris Davies, who has a history in an IT firm in Geelong and is more recently an EOS implementer, which we'll get into today. Welcome to the Digital Marketing Wingman Podcast, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice and early and a cold, brisk morning in Geelong this morning.
Ridiculous, can't feel my fingers.
We just went for coffee though, so that was nice to get warmed up a little bit. So today I thought we'd talk a little bit about your journey. It's quite a good one, running a business in Geelong for quite some time, and then you exited from that business and now have a second career, really.
Yeah, a transition, which is the upshot that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, so to give everybody a bit of a story of how did you get started in business and IT?
Interesting. I suppose most people who start a business do it for probably because they want more freedom, or they want to earn some more money, they want to have more control over their lives, or sometimes they just want to do it better than the people they work for. And I was that guy. I was arrogant, very, very. Thankfully, I realised rather quickly I didn't know shit.
Yes.
And spent the rest of my career trying to learn the right way to do things. So I was enterprise IT with some large organisations. Realised while I was working in multiple small businesses through this large organisation that IT, particularly in Geelong, didn't have a great, I suppose, it wasn't perceived in a good way by business.
In what way? How was it perceived?
Well, the industry was really young. We're talking late 90s. So it was just PCs and people building PCs and selling PCs.
And we're only a few years out of dial-up internet past there.
We were still in it, right?
Yeah.
ADSL or broadband wasn't a thing until like the early 2000s, I think. Someone can fact check me on that. But it was, somebody needs to be able to doing this better. So we started, there was a business partner of mine at the time. We thought, let's bring some enterprise-grade IT back to Geelong, which is interesting because I was speaking to somebody recently who is 3 or 5 years into business. I need to be close to the microphone.
Okay.
So they're 3 or 5 years into this managed services business, and their idea is to bring enterprise down to the small to medium market, which is a great concept, but nobody wants to pay for it. So at some point you realise there's a happy medium here. But we jumped into that and we were really successful. We grew really quickly. Figuring out eventually that overservicing and undercharging aren't great business strategies. So we had some...
Well, they can be at the start, right? That's how you become
It can be part
popular.
of your marketing strategy.
Yeah.
I did have I sat in front of a friend of mine, an advisor, with a $60,000 marketing plan from not from Pixel. This was years ago.
Yeah.
And he said, is that really going to... I said, we need to figure out what makes us different. He goes, but what if you're not different? What if you're the same as everybody else and everybody says they're different, but what if you're not? So how about you invest that $60,000 into specifically targetingly over-servicing some clients that will refer you on, use that as a marketing, and how do you test that? And I thought it was a different way to look at things.
Yeah.
So over-servicing with intent, not over-servicing as a culture.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's dangerous.
And hard to scale.
Impossible to scale profitably. So GFC hit some cash issues as a result of this overservicing and undercharging, and I ended up buying my business partner out at the time, which I've still got PTSD about to this day. Still have those moments of if I knew then what I know now, how different would things be?
How so?
Oh, look, misalignment. Alignment is everything. Like, it's not consensus. You don't have to agree on everything, but you have to agree to be open and listen and respectful of others' opinions, but then also clearly show the other what you expect from them, and then they also then show what, particularly with a 50-50 partnership.
Yeah.
Like it's like having another marriage. And there's another marriage behind that as well that have their own opinions,
Yes.
that only hear your unfiltered version of events. So it can become a really negative thing.
Yeah.
A mate of mine said the only business he's ever seen that works well with a 50-50 partnership had two guys that had married a set of twins.
Oh.
So they basically pulled all the strings.
Yeah.
And that helped that relationship stay together. So if I knew then what I know now, which is a bit more about how do we align on values, how are we clear about expectations.
I think with my experience is I've had a business partnership as well, is that inevitably someone will feel, if not both of you will feel like you're doing more than the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where clarity comes into it. Spending the time, we spend a lot of time within the EOS process in defining the business functions that we have within our organisation. We go structure first, and we talk about having 3 to 5 roles attached to each of these functions, each of these positions, so that there's clarity around that. And then also a metric or a measurable attached to that as well, so we know what good looks like. So creating that level of structure and clarity, then you're never going to lean into somebody's lane too far, or you're never going to have that subjective, yeah, but I'm doing all the hours and you're not, which is what killed us effectively as well in some ways.
Yeah. So after you bought the business, it continued to grow when you bought out your business partner?
We had a dip because, again, if you're over-servicing and undercharging, you can't afford to put more staff on. So you can't keep that up.
But in theory, you're over-delivering, so people are loving what you're doing and they're referring more people that want you to over-deliver.
Correct.
too.
And you cannot continue to do that because you can't afford to pay people because you don't make enough money to scale at that rate.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't. Somebody may have some secret source that we didn't know about.
Yeah.
So we probably around a $2.5 million business then.
Yeah.
Probably lost $600,000-$700,000 worth of revenue over a 6-month period.
Right.
Customers were leaving because they were dissatisfied. So it was a moment of, I called it a galvanizing moment for the team, in that it was like, we can't afford to lose any more clients. This is now us. Let's get in. So we hugged our clients so tightly that also became almost Ray McLean from Leading Teams also often says a weakness is often an overdeveloped strength.
Yeah.
And we cared and hugged our clients so tightly that then became another barrier to profitability for us. So yes, we're over-servicing, we're trying to break that, but then there's also this hug your clients tightly because we can't afford to lose them mentality. All because we didn't have a great sales and marketing strategy either. Very strong in operations. Our finance acumen was pretty strong, but our sales and marketing weak because we felt sales was a dirty word.
So how did you find an equilibrium where clients still loved and felt like they were getting value from your service without losing them or losing profitability?
That's the $2 million question. That was the journey, and I use journey way too often, but you got to go through a dip, which is the readjustment and realignment of expectations, and that goes for clear expectations with your team about what good looks like, but also servicing your clients within that level of satisfaction that this is what we've paid for, this is what you get. And then you can absolutely delight your clients in certain ways, but we look for satisfied clients, not happy clients, because happy all the time raises the bar and you eventually choke yourself on that bar. So satisfaction should be the baseline. And then happiness can come sporadically, absolutely.
So did you set yourself a target in terms of that over delivery? Did you set yourself a target to hit 100% delivery and stop there, or was there a sense of we still do a little, still provide that extra delight for the customer, but there's a limit to how much?
It's super hard to quantify. I still don't think we ever nailed it, but
You must have had some sense of how much it was costing you.
Well, the metrics around the productivity of your team, the utilisation of your team, how long customers wait, what their net promoter score, what their CSAT, you take a balance of satisfaction versus response time versus how profitable are the agreements that you have under, and it's a scorecard. It's not a number, so you got to get that feeling, and you want to build that into your culture as well. That people should be aware of their time. That there's a transaction that happens with a human. Like there's humans and there's resources. So you can sit across the table from someone that you genuinely love as a human, but they're also delivering a resource to an organisation that ultimately needs to be profitable. So having that conversation around your time is something that we're having a transaction that I'm investing in you, and I'm making an investment in buying your time to be able to resell a skill set that you have that I don't have. So we need to be able to capture that time. Timesheets is a whole other kettle of fish that people hate. Yeah. But one of the most successful strategy I had to convince a reasonably large team to do timesheets was when you come to me and ask for a salary review in 12 months and you say you've been working all these extra hours, if I don't see that in your timesheet, it's really hard for me to have that conversation with you. So just track it and we can have a conversation as we go through it, because it's evidence for you, but it's evidence for our clients that we're actually delivering on the effort that they expect. It should be a value transaction, but effort still comes into people's minds. You can never disconnect that completely.
Time tracking is a funny thing. We've had friction or hurdles with time tracking ourselves with, setting targets for time tracking and then feeling the need to allocate time to things that, you didn't actually spend that time, but you felt like you had to hit that number. And so it does open up Pandora's box once you start tracking time. It's
similar with most numbers, right? You get what you incentivize, you get what you track. What gets measured gets managed I think it's the Peter Drucker statement. Similar thing with service levels. Ultimately, customer satisfaction should be the judge of whether you're doing a good job or not. But when there's a level of governance that needs to be put around it, and that's what we do in business, we need to buy low, sell high. We need to take some margin in the middle, and hopefully we get some profit after tax, that whole conversation. But boards love quantifiable metrics to be able to tick a box and make sure things are going okay. So service level agreements, particularly in the service industry, they need to know what to hold us accountable to. And whether the users are happy is irrelevant. If you missed your delivery times on X, Y, Z, because it's not quantifiable. So similar with timesheets, that ultimately, as long as satisfied customers, profitable business, who cares what time's happening, getting put in. But you need something. So there's got to be a happy medium in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. So you obviously built the business around some of these concepts and it did well to the eventual exit opportunity.
Yeah. Interesting times in that, if you build a good business, you don't necessarily need to sell, which is great, right? So you can run a clean business that's profitable, that hopefully has some good customer retention. You want to. A guy that has helped me out immensely over the years says a good business is one that's ready for sale at any given moment to the benefit of the seller. And we want to build satisfied customers that are willing to refer us to other customers. And when you get those two things in place, then you shouldn't have to fight fires. You shouldn't have to always be out of control and doing emails at 10 o'clock at night. So I felt like I had a reasonable balance after a while, and that takes a lot of time, but it also takes the almost, whether it's the confidence or the courage to delegate, and that not everyone can do it as well as you think you can do it, but 80% is good enough. And if you've got two people doing 80% of what you could do, you're still multiplying your own output. And that's the only way you can scale, is to be able to delegate tasks down and replicate yourself in some way. But to do that, you've got to understand what you're doing and what the outcomes are. Because we sort of hit that 15-person mark, and that's 12 to 15 staff seems to be a stumbling block or a ceiling, because you can't have one-to-one relationships with that many people to ensure alignment all the time. So you need to have systems in place to then allow that, and we don't build those systems.
And that layer of management.
And then adding that abstraction, I guess, of having another person's opinions in the middle as well.
And those staff add pressure to profitability.
Yep.
Because they're not necessarily, they're not solely focused on revenue driving activities.
Yep.
It is a sort of make or break point, isn't it?
Well, you want to grow on the stairs, you want to grow on a ramp, right? So you want to grow and consolidate, grow and consolidate. Because if it's constant change, then it's constant pain. That sounds like a cliche. But same sort of thing. Is it better to be overstaffed or understaffed?
Yeah.
Both. Depends on the phase of business growth. It's always better to be at or understaffed from a profitability perspective.
Yeah.
But that puts pressure on your people. So you've got to pay for that somewhere. And if there's pressure on your people, then more often than not, you'll have extra requirements for sick days, you'll have extra requirements for salary reviews, you might have extra recruitment requirements. So you've got to pay somewhere. Either you invest in your people and you invest in creating a great environment, or you're constantly recruiting and you're constantly replacing and training. So pick which one. And I much prefer to pick the one where I like working with people and I look after them and they stay around for a long time.
Yeah.
Particularly in professional services, like the longer you keep your customers, the more profitable they are. The longer you keep your staff, the more profitable your business is. So build some systems around retention.
Yeah.
It's a strategy that seems to have worked for us.
So you're probably one of the most structured, systemized, intelligent business owners that I know.
My wife, Ebony, would
I'm not trying
viciously disagree with
pump
that.
up your tires here, but this all came about not from, obviously a lot of trial and error, but it also came about from deliberate learnings and the implementation of EOS. So for everyone out there who doesn't know what EOS is yet, can you give us an explanation?
Entrepreneurial operating system. Again, it's another one of those words that has taken me a long time to fall in love with. Entrepreneurial seems to have a stigma attached to it. It's a certain person you look at when they say that I'm an entrepreneur.
Yep.
But it's a mindset, or it's a way of operating. Using entrepreneurial as a word is to multiply the effect of low resources, basically to do a lot with little. That's what I see entrepreneurial is. So EOS is it's an operating system that we, as an IT guy or technology guy, it's great to see something you can install in a business, which then gives everybody the same terminology and the same tool set to deliver consistent results. Sounds boring because good business should be boring, right? Our best day in business sometimes is the one where we go home and we go, I was just everywhere today and I did lots of stuff, and what did you achieve? I don't know, but I was busy. We're in the worst days when nothing went wrong and, things just ticked along and everyone was happy. It was boring. Yeah. We want business to be boring so you can spend your time outside of your business living an amazing life. But EOS was something that we found at Evo.
How long ago did you get onto that?
It's probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
Your
total lifespan in
21 years.
21 years, wow.
Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah, so only the last third was EOS.
Yeah, yep. And the first sort of 2/3 were spent in this organisational ADHD squirrel shiny thing.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge with my strategy of outlearning my competition early on, caused this organisational whiplash. Every 90 days I was changing strategy, changing tactic. Let's try this now. And you never actually embed it long enough to see results. And that causes stress for people consistently. So EOS, again, there's a guy, Gino Wickman, who wrote a book called Traction. And what he did was wrote down everything that he did to help turn around his family business, and then helped coach other businesses through that process to refine it over the course of many years. It's a set of tools and disciplines that you install in a business that help you do 3 things. You get vision, traction, and you get healthy. So you get vision from the standpoint that everyone in the organisation knows who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. And that then pushes down to everybody in the organisation. Traction in that everyone has the tools and disciplines to build accountability, and actually, my terminology is just to get shit done.
Yes.
And then healthy, when you're building leadership teams, quite often high-performing leaders don't necessarily perform well together or play well together. So building a healthy, cohesive leadership team that actually has fun, and that's one of my personal core values, is to bring fun to business, because it doesn't have to be boring all the time. If you're not enjoying it, why are you doing it? So if you can get those 3 things in place, then it changes your world. And we talk about very American, but building an EOS life, which is, getting compensated reasonably for doing something you love, to have time for your own hobbies. There's a whole bunch of things that we should be doing, but we spend our times buried in this, what we think a business owner should be, which is that 24/7 person who's always
grind
the
culture.
grind. Don't get me started on Vaynerchuk. I think he's calmed down a bit now, but I know you love him.
I used to.
Yeah.
It was very motivating.
Yeah.
Sometimes those pep talks, but I understand.
Sporadically, absolutely, but as a lifestyle, it's not what it should be about.
Well, his argument would be, if that's you, that can be you.
Yeah.
But if it's not you, that's fine too.
Yep.
Like if you love the grind or you love the hustle, then that's great. But it's not for everyone.
No, and ultimately it will catch up with you at some point. I've worked with a guy for years who I was always counselling around, just, you don't have to put in 60 hours a week, mate. It's okay. And he goes, no, I love it. I won't burn out. Got 2 kids now.
Maybe I'm naive.
Everything's changed.
I'm in that mode too. I sort of feel like I cannot burn out. I actually feel like I cannot burn out.
Maybe there's a scale or a scope for people.
Yeah, maybe that will change over time in my life, but at the moment, I don't think there's anything that would actually make me hate or have a breakdown over this business, because it is my life. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, there's certainly phases we go through, and one of the things that I spend most of my time now is then I want to help people fall in love with their business again, because we do fall out of love with your business. I tell stories all the time about going through phases where if one more person walked into my office with a people issue, I was going to flip the table, push the server rack into the street and go and work at Officeworks. Yeah. That's it. I'm done. Yeah. Because 80% of our issues are people-based, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're small, you can love your business because you control everything. You've got your arms around it. But when it gets a little bit too big to get your arms around, that's when the stress enters, because you don't have the systems and processes to be able to scale that gracefully. And I like the word gracefully because it gives you a nice perspective of how it should go. Yeah. Smooth and flow, and slow is fast, and all these things. So finding EOS was a calm down Davies moment. Yeah. And I say that to myself all the time, calm down Davies. So I was looking for, this is post buyout.
Yep.
Looking for a meeting cadence, because we had 16 to 18 staff then, and it was almost how the hell do I have meaningful conversations with enough people to ensure that what's in my head gets executed at the lowest possible level. So I found traction. I read it, blew my mind, put it back in the bookshelf, and got sucked back into the weeds. And it was a couple of years after that I ran into a mate of mine who was running probably 4 times the size business of mine in Melbourne. And he goes, this is the business. I went, I've read that. He goes, I'm actually becoming an implementer. Can I help you out? I said, bring it in. So he came down and we ran our first quarterly. I think I had 3 iterations of leadership team over the course of the first couple of years, trying to ensure that the right people were in the right seats. And we built,
which is what EOS can do, right? It can flush out your team a little bit if they're not on the same.
Best and worst part of it. There's a guy I was talking to at a conference earlier in the year who, implementers such as myself, he said, I just had a catch up with a client I've been working with for a year. And I asked him, how's it been? And he goes, shit house. I said, why? What do you mean? He goes, oh no, business perspective, best year we've ever had. Personally, it was exhausting because he had to pay off all the debt that he'd built up over the years by not making people decisions. And this is, we sit there and we'll allow underperformers because they're good people. So we're effectively choosing to run a not-for-profit or near to it. And we have these expectations of people's outputs that we don't necessarily articulate. Because you hire amazing people at a certain size and you put them in and you give them some framework and you let them go. But after a while, if you've got 20 people and they're all 1% out of alignment, by the time you get to the end of it, you're facing in the wrong direction. Yeah. Particularly over time, that gets worse and worse. So building those cadences into so that was a big change for us.
Yeah, well, of the people that I have introduced EOS to, it's actually been the first thing that they've all said is the right person, wrong seat.
Yep,
is the common thing.
Yep.
People that have been in the business for a long time, they realise that they're not helping them achieve their goals.
It's one of those people talk about values, and they're values-based organisations. actually using your values on a daily basis is such a core part of it. And that's what we talk about. Right person is somebody that believes in your values and believes in what you do. If somebody doesn't, then they're toxic to your culture, and it's a hard.
Could be a lovely person still. You might love them, they might love you,
but they disagree fundamentally with what you believe in as a business.
Yeah,
and that's
can't get past that.
No, there's no way. Then the other part of it is, we talk about people. They have to get the role they're in. They have to be able to conceptually understand what the hell you want them to do. They've got to be motivated, so they've got to want it. And you can't pay people to get it or want it. You've got to hire for that. Then they've got to have the capacity to do it. They've got to have the skills, the tools, the supervision. So a lot of that, you don't just give somebody a role and they've got capacity. If you put somebody in a space that you've created for them and you don't give them your time and your support, then you're creating failure. And this is what a lot of people, I've paid you a lot of money, I've put you in the role, you should just do it. Well, you should tell them what to do, you should help them, coach them through it and ensure that there's alignment, and then reconnect with them in a regular enough cadence. And that can happen very frequently early on until you build trust in their character that they're going to deliver. And then you can reduce that cadence over time. So there's a lot of strategies around ensuring that again, we talk about alignment, not consensus. Like, you can agree to disagree, but you've got to disagree and commit. And that's, you can't disagree and then come back and say, I told you so, because that's a cultural problem right there.
Yeah.
Right person, right seat. 80% of our issues are people issues. And one of my favourite questions at the moment that I've stolen from another implementer is if we had the resources or the balls to make one people move in the next quarter, what would that be? Because we're often just one people move away from a breakthrough, which is mind-blowing to think about. But anyway, so everything we do in business is leveraging humans. Yeah. But we don't spend anywhere near enough time actually working with humans. It's all about the product or the service or the finances.
Yeah. Well, we had a sort of similar story, but I had received the book Traction from a colleague of yours, from Murray.
Murray, legend.
And no disrespect to Murray, but I did not read it immediately.
Yep.
And I didn't put much thought into it, really. I might have read the synopsis, that's about it.
Yep.
And then down the track, we worked with your business and we were providing some marketing services. And when you exited, I think you said to me that one of the main benefits was EOS to that whole process. The fact that the business was so saleable, it was so structured. And so I thought, I better read this book. And within the first few pages, I knew I should have read it a long time ago.
Yep.
It was an aha moment. And fast forward, we did a bit of self-implementation for a couple of quarters and then got you involved. So you are now our EOS implementer.
I am.
And we're obviously a digital marketing agency, but a component of EOS is marketing and defining your marketing strategy. So do you want to give us a quick little insight into how that works with EOS?
Yes, it's again, everything in EOS, to leaning on that entrepreneurial word. It's the 20-80 approach. Like, we're looking for the 20% of effort that we can expend to get us 80% of the outcome. And the marketing strategy is one of the 8 questions that we ask to build a vision. Again, everything's in a system. Everything's infinitely simplified, because that's a piece of learning that we often miss when we're growing a business, is that we need to keep things simple, because you need to have a handful of rules, you need to remind people often, and good parenting is good leadership, right? It's consistency. So we have these 8 questions that we have on a one-page strategic plan that we call the Vision Traction Organizer, VTO. There's so many acronyms, it's amazing.
They just become part of language within the business though, don't they?
And that's part of the point. That's part of the operating system, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably, I think I've said that multiple times, that having a way of solving issues is key to the business, but having shared language is probably one of the biggest benefits you get in an organisation. Like, just an aside, one of the tiny 1%ers that we teach, which often gets missed, is that in a meeting, if there's 8 people around the table and we're asking for comment, we always request the brave one to go first, because there's always someone who'll go, I'll go. We always move to the left. And people go, why? See, because that saves you 5 to 15 minutes in every single meeting.
Who's going to go
having
next?
to wait who's going to go next. Like these little simple 1%ers that will just change the world because that's just how we do it.
Yep.
It's an operating system, right?
Move on.
And you can teach that and it becomes taught by osmosis because then people jump in your meetings and it always happens the same way. Consistency, right? But the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, I think it's the fourth question we ask is, what's your marketing strategy? And it's not a strategy as far as a 180-page tactical marketing document that shows you where your ad spend is going to go. It's why are you in business and who are the people that are going to help you get there? Who from the perspective of the psychographic, geographic, demographic, those traditional, where are they? What are they like? What businesses are in? And we then take that into a conversation around what makes you unique. So we have a term called 3 uniques. And that was always hard as an MSP in the IT space is you all push buttons, you all fix broken stuff, you all think you're going to help people with productivity. Like everybody's just looks the same.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out what you might line up 15 of your competitors and 10 of them can do 2 of them. Most of them can do 1 of them, but nobody can do all 3. So when you tie that together with your why you're in business, your niche, which is kind of what you do better than everybody else, and then your 3 uniques, that's your elevator pitch then. So what do you guys do? Well, we change the world. How do you do that? We do that by delivering this. But why would I use you? Well, because this, and this. You've just tied it all together. And when you've got all your marketing tied with the same messaging, and the other components to that marketing strategy are building a visual representation of your customer journey, which then just takes anxiety out of the sale. You can sit down and actually show someone how you care for them. Like, don't tell me, show me. Like is common term.
Yep.
And then
proven process.
It's called a proven process.
Yep.
That's good to know.
Amazingly effective. Much more effective than explaining it. I've done that for years. Just explained our process, and I can do it off the top of my head, do it with my eyes closed, one arm behind my back. But actually showing someone has had a massive impact in the credibility, the perceived credibility of our process.
You've thought about it. It's considered.
We've got a diagram for it.
Yeah. It's not just something that you can tell. The sales process is built with mistrust, right? Because people have got this perception around being sold to.
Yeah.
In a services firm, you don't generally go into services if you don't want to help people. So that's forgotten, I think, a lot of the time, is that we don't start services businesses because we don't want to help people. We genuinely want to show people a better way of doing something or share our knowledge or skill set. And being able to show somebody a visual representation of how they're cared for throughout the entire life cycle with you, again, credibility takes the anxiety away, and it just takes away one of those little blockers that might make somebody just build that trust a little bit more, because ultimately we need to build trust to be able to deliver the ultimate service to people.
Yeah.
And the final part of that is to build a guarantee into your offering, which 50-50 of my clients have got guarantees, but it's another one of those things that put a bit of skin in the game, and what's the biggest blocker or biggest objection you get during sales, and fashion a guarantee around that. Knock it out of the way. If that fails, then we'll do this. Oh, okay. Just little strategies that build up over time.
Yeah.
But what market are we in, which is who's the people that we want to service. And the idea is that if you had a list of businesses and you overlaid that psychographic, geographic, demographic, you'd be actually come up with a list of your target market, and then all your marketing should be focused on those people.
What have you heard any great guarantees you've come across that you're like, wow, that's so sellable?
I really wish I had.
Yeah.
Because that's the hard one, right? Our guarantee at EvoLogic used to be, if you don't love us in the first 90 days, we'll put it back the way we found it and walk away and say sorry.
Yeah.
So the contracts were reasonably, like there was a 90-day warranty in there.
Yeah.
Love it or walk away. I don't think that was the terminology we used, but I should have used that because it would have worked much better.
Yeah. So we often, like in marketing world, we often have the objection of, I don't want to get locked in. What if it doesn't work?
Yep.
What's going to happen? You want to sign up for 6 months, 12 months. What if it doesn't work in the first 2 months?
Yep.
So we're sort of crafting our own guarantee at the moment that would give people that confidence to continue?
Because that's be counterintuitive, wouldn't it, to offer a guarantee that if it doesn't work in a short amount of time, that you can walk away.
There's an education piece there, so that our strategies are long term.
Yep.
But also we acknowledge that if it doesn't work for both parties, that maybe we should allow them to walk away.
Oh, and that comes back as well. Like you want to work with businesses that you want to work with as well. So when you're setting your values as an organisation, passing your customer base through that same values filter is a great thing to do from a longevity perspective. Because we want to keep customers for a long time if we can. Yeah. Which means I always used to say that if our best customers and our business were people, they'd be friends. They'd be mates. They'd hang out. Like that's the ultimate way to look at it from my perspective, because I wanted to create somewhere that I wanted to turn up to. Yeah. And I think that's missed sometimes. So that's the ultimate benefit of being a business owner, is you get to create your own destiny and create the people that you get to hang out with, and you can choose who to do business with, and you're ultimately like ridiculously in charge of your own future, which is daunting at the same time. But yeah, finding people and passing those customers through that filter, that can create much better alignment. Yeah.
Well, there's so many facets to EOS. That's obviously just the absolute surface right there. If anyone was interested in finding out more about EOS, what do you think is their best first step?
EOSworldwide.com is the website. All the tools that we teach are downloadable. Yep. The process is on there. You can self-implement. It's built for self-implementers. People like myself, we're lucky enough in Geelong Surf Coast to have 4 implementers in the region, so which is kind of funny because it's relatively unknown in the area.
It's growing quickly though.
There 35 implementers in the country, 700 and something globally. Yeah. So it's still quite new in Australia. But it is. There's no silver bullets. There's no magic happening here. It is simple, repeatable tools, which when you read the book, it's like, yeah, I've seen all that stuff before. But nobody's put it into a model the same way that Gino has that's teachable. And that's always one of the things that I sort of, if people say why EOS, is because it's not about you, it's about the system now. And it's about being able to teach a leadership team to elevate and run an organisation for you as a leader. Then you can step into whatever position you want to be, where your unique ability is. So EOSworldwide.com, all the resources are there. Or
grab the book. Traction.
Hit me up for a copy of Traction. I've got a ton of them in my office.
Chris Davies on LinkedIn probably is the best way
Chris
to get
Davies on LinkedIn. Just connect with me.
Yep. Awesome.
Happy to have coffee, always.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning and your wisdom in this cold morning. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, man. We'll turn the heater back on now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
See ya.